Yeah, I wasn't surprised. I hate to say it. I was certainly hoping the best for her. But I mean, she said it perfectly. It was baptism by fire. It was not a great debut. I mean, I can't sugarcoat and say, oh, she was actually, running up in the top 20 and looked like she was headed for a very strong debut. Of course, she spun out, in the first 5 laps of the race and then obviously spun again and took out Daniel Suarez in that accident. So it wasn't good. It simply wasn't good. You can't just pretend that it actually was. But I don't think that's entirely her fault. I think it's not even predominantly her fault. I think the fault belongs with what we've been discussing all week, and that is NASCAR needs some sort of standard licensing system or approval process, or at least more transparency in their approval process, because we have had these controversies time and time again. I brought up on the Encore show, I couldn't help but think back to Jennifer Jo Cobb wanting to make her Cup debut at Talladega all those years ago. Obviously, it's fresh in everybody's minds with the controversy with Mike Wallace at the Daytona 500 this year. And then you heard Tommy Joe Martins come out and say this week that he's not approved to run Cup when he has far more experience in trucks and Xfinity than Katherine Legge has. Joe, as you mentioned, Katherine Legge has 5 Xfinity starts under her belt. 4 of them came in 2018. Of those 5, only 1 is on an oval. It was at Richmond with JD Motorsports in 2018. She finished in 28th place. I know NASCAR said that she did the ARCA race at Daytona, but she got caught up in that multi-car, 15-car accident on lap 4, I think. I mean, that's an 80-lap race. Think of all the laps that she was going to run in that race that she didn't get to run because she got caught up in that accident. Think of all that experience that she lost out on. We know she knows how to go fast. Her Indianapolis 500 record is proof of that. She's the fastest woman in IMS history. So I get what NASCAR was saying, that played no small role in their decision to approve her for this event. But I actually like what Parker Klickerman and Landon Castle said on their Money Lap podcast this weekend. I think it would have actually made more sense for her to make her Cup Series debut, obviously at a road course, but maybe even this weekend at Las Vegas at a 1.5 miles. Because on a 1.5 miles, the cars are more spread out. It's not going to sound great putting it this way, but you kind of have more places to hide, so to speak. There's nowhere to hide at a short track. Especially if it would have been a track like Martinsville or Bristol. I mean, I understand the idea of the speeds are lower, but again, with Katherine Legge, I don't think the speed is the issue. Go look at her Indianapolis 500 qualifying runs the last 2 seasons and tell me that the speed is the issue. I don't think that's the issue here. The issue was this is a hard series, okay? NASCAR Cup is a different beast from ARCA, from trucks, from Xfinity, especially in the next gen era. It is very competitive. She was put in the only car that does not have a charter. With no disrespect to BJ McLeod and Live Fast Motorsports, they're doing the best with what they can. I know they had to sell their charter a couple of years ago, and they've punched above their weight plenty of times before. I think that is objectively the least funded car in the field. I think even if BJ's being honest with you, he'll tell you that they are the least funded operation in the Cup Series, or close to it, of the teams that run part-time without much sponsorship, without much manufacturer support, just as many open races as they can find sponsorship for. It was not a situation where you could look at this and say, okay, Katherine Legge is ready. She's prepared. She's set up for success. We're in an era now where you've got talking heads on Sirius XM NASCAR radio that are saying, I watched practice and it just pisses me off. It doesn't seem like it's necessary. I don't know. I think Katherine Legge would have told you it was necessary this weekend. I think she would have loved to get some more practice time, have 3 1-hour practice sessions going into this weekend. What do we even get 20 or 25 minutes nowadays? We have 1 practice session. We send them out for qualifying. And then congratulations, you're making your Cup Series debut. We're going to drop the green flag for the race. And I just look at that and I think to myself, it would be so much easier on, these young drivers coming in, but also these experienced drivers from other disciplines like a Katherine Legge or an Elio Castroneves, if we gave them more on-track time to get used to their equipment and these cars in this series that's completely different from what they've previously come from. We went through this at Daytona, obviously, with Elio. This was the first time in several years now that we actually had a practice session before we sent them out to qualify for the biggest race of the year. Think of how much track time, Katherine Legge would have had at Indianapolis for the last couple of years. They're on the track. I mean, they used to call it the entire month of May because we didn't have the Grand Prix on the road course. We had practice all throughout the entire month of May. So I don't understand the obsession that some people in our sport seem to have with not wanting more practice time nowadays either. So, I think there are a lot of factors that went into why this was not a very good weekend for Katherine Legge. But I think the driver, I'm not going to absolve her from complete blame. Of course, she made a mistake and it took out Daniel Suarez, and that's unfortunate. I did see that Racer.com article. She reached out to Daniel Suarez, gave him a phone call, and he was very clear. He said, look, you're not the problem. The problem is the approval process. The problem is we don't know what the criteria is for where drivers are allowed to start racing in this series. And Suarez was also very transparent. He said, we all love to see a female driver make it in this series, but the circumstances under which Katherine Legge made her debut, I think it is perfectly fine to have the conversation that maybe she wasn't ready, and maybe we need to take a look at the future here and how we license drivers and allow them to make their debuts in this series, because obviously there's no consistency here. And it seems like, if there is a defined criteria, there's only a select handful of people who know what that is. So it was very unfortunate nonetheless. And I think also just some of the fan reaction that I've seen on social media, and it's still going here even almost a week after the debut happened. Just really unfortunate to see, some of the comments that a lot of fans are making. Of course, that Racer article that I mentioned, apparently there was a fan at the autograph session that just asked her, hey, what lap are you going to crash on this weekend? Fans have to be better than that. There's no place for that in our sport. And, I'm sure, I tweeted that quote from the article. Somebody said, well, doesn't Ricky Stenhouse get that too? Doesn't Kyle Busch get that too from his haters? Okay, I don't think that makes it right. It's very frustrating to be a part of this fan base sometimes. And I think that if we use some critical thinking, we could do a better job of separating this is a man's sport, women don't belong here, women can't drive, bullcrap mentality. I'll keep it G-rated for our viewers here. But I think it's unfortunate that we can't separate that from the idea of, let's look at this objectively. Let's look at her resume. She's very accomplished in sports cars. She's accomplished in open wheel racing. She doesn't have a ton of stock car experience, and putting her in an uncharted car on a short track with minimal practice time. I know she got in the simulator, but nothing compares to the real thing. I just think it was a recipe for what we saw this weekend. And unfortunately, I know she was outside the bottom 5. I think we had a lot of attrition from that multi-car accident, which she did a very good job of avoiding. I will give her that. It could have been worse. It wasn't great, but it could have been worse. And it's unfortunate that some fans are, and a lot of them are doing it from behind anonymous accounts, which just pisses me off even more. If you're going to be that bold, just say it with your face. It's unfortunate that they seem to be taking victory laps and taking delight in her misfortune this weekend. But again, I don't think that's predominantly on the driver. I think it's predominantly on all of the circumstances creating this perfect storm that did not set her up for success.